first meeting was addressing the problems that are on the ongoing torment, devastation of the planet Earth and the population. Too much has been done for too long to too many. Basically, Enki, the Queen's son, wanted his own empire, and he was dead set on getting it or acquiring it, even to the point of killing his mother to get the empire. But she was able to disregard his intent to get rid of her and set up a way for him to escape the retribution that he had earned. Basically, Enki and his buddies, his scientists, changed the DNA of the population of smart apes on the planet Earth thousands of years ago in our history, but a few minutes of time in his history. That's part of the dilemma here. What we see occurred over 100,000 years. What he saw occurred to him a few days. So for him, it was not an ongoing torture. For us, it was. We were forced to work in his mines and plantations, to continually work until we dropped or died, whichever. His mother was pleased with the amount of benefit she received from this planet in the form of gold and produce meaning us, because they did eat us. And they ate our emotions. That's how they survived. And so, because this has been accelerated to a point where the entire planet is under a tremendous annihilation mandate, something had to be done. So a request was made to speak to the Queen. She granted it. The guides, Reva Zartars and Paul Twitchell, myself, Dwayne, and others, made a special trip to her court to confront her. Because if she accepted what Enki, her son, her favorite insane son, bratty son, did, then she was culpable. She violated the laws of the universe just as much as he did. But he could say, oh, I was insane at the time, and get away with that, just like people do in the courts today. But she could not get away and claim insanity as a defense. She knew what he was doing, and she allowed it. And that's the bottom line. She is just as guilty as he is. In fact, even more so. So, as we come up to the point of the meeting, a lot of changes were made by members of the party that were going to discuss this problem with her. By changes, I mean that our bodies were altered physically to be more reptilian. And yes, they are lizard-looking people. They have snake-like faces. They have tails. They are a mottled skin. They're 300 feet tall. And they live for thousands of years because they eat gold dust. And it prolongs their life by thousands of years, and it changes their DNA to the point that it is in a correct vibrational rate. Therefore, they don't get diseased, they don't suffer any pains or any kind of deterioration in their body, and their minds just accelerate. You've got to realize that the reptilians are thousands of years ahead of us, both in technology and life and awareness of how to operate outside of the range of frequency that humans can only see a part of. That's why it's so difficult with everything that we're dealing with on this planet Earth. We cannot see the reptilians because our viewpoint from our limited sight is only a certain frequency, and we can't see above it and we can't see below it. Just like when you blow a dog whistle, humans cannot hear that range, but the dog can, because the dog's ears or hearing is more sensitive than ours. So we were physically altered to appear more, having a more in common appearance with the Queen. So our words would not be lost. And the reason this was done, because the Orion people consider us humans less than ants. We're stupid monkeys to them. They're so far ahead of us in intelligence and knowledge and know-how. They know how to manipulate frequencies. So our bodies were changed to look more reptilian. And in doing so, the Queen would listen, at least listen to the words we were going to say to her. And mainly it was just to call her down. Look, this is torturing of these animals, and you as an Orion royalty would not allow this to go on this long without saying something, or more importantly, doing something. If you considered us dumb animals, you don't treat dumb animals like Inky treated us. We then approached the Queen in her court and asked her this question. Are you comfortable with what you're doing? You see it's being presented to you on a large screen. You hear the tortures, the cries of children being murdered and frightened to death. Are you in agreement that that's okay? That what Inky is started and doing is all right with you? As the representative of the Orion Empire, it's okay to torture dumb animals? The question had to be asked. And the response? Total arrogance and indifference. The court paused and waited to see if she was going to do anything, and she did not, which meant and led to her being brought before the Lords of Karma in this universe, and to stand and admit her wrongdoings. But someone who is above the law does not consider that a threat in any way. She really, really had stepped on the other side. So all we could do is allow the Lords of Karma to answer the request of help from the dumb animals that the reptilians, the Orion people call Lulus, L-U-L-U. That's what they consider a dumb beast. And yes, they can manipulate our thought processes. They can give us hypnotic commands. Just by looking at their eyes, you can be convinced that what you're doing as a slave is exactly what you want to do, and you have lost your free will. And that is against the laws of the universe. Every living entity has free will and the right to choose. But when they stack the deck against you and they tell you lies, they have taken your free will away, and that is a crime, and it must be answered.
So, Miss Claudia, with this first meeting we've had with the Orion Queen, we did expect a little more, but then again, for myself, just waiting to see what was going to happen here, just like any diplomat would do, etc. Either they don't answer, but most of the time, like the diplomats here on Earth, they do answer, but they always give you a roundabout answer that really doesn't mean a whole lot because of their agenda, and that is that just like on the Earth, again, these are relationships from Inky that have been created on the Earth for, you talked about lifetimes, and we've been there. All of us have been through these lifetimes, and we do need this experience. It's all fine. This is what people should understand, is that this is why they came here, to eventually wake up all the way and see the true reality, be able to recognize and see it and get beyond creation, cause and effect. So we, my idea here was to go on this adventure with Miss Claudia here and others and Rebazar, etc., and they were willing, and so because it made sense, and the Queen, like so many diplomatic people all over the world, religious, diplomatic, whatever, everybody's got some form of cause and effect karma, because this is how it is here. We all have to face ourselves at one time, and it's all okay. And we simply gave the Queen a chance to do this, but she decided not to, because the real guides would have been there to back her up, and she could have decided something wonderful for everybody, but she decided what she had. So we gave her this chance. Again, we were just giving her that moment to see if she could decide whatever. But she has huge karma. She has huge karma from ever since she's come here. So, and we have rights too to step up and have this confronted, and only the real guides, Rebazar and the real guides, real universal guides, can handle this. They supersede the Lords of Karma and everything like that. And yes, the Lords of Karma, I don't think they were there the first time, but I would say we eventually brought them into, and everybody else. As we go along here in this series, we'll explain more of that. But the first step was just to get a basic idea of what's going on. So it took many more meetings, and we'll go over this, before the Queen was finally taken away through her own arrogance. And again, it's nothing we've done. She did it all. So it's like anyone. People can say whatever, just like the politicians here, but it's not about what they say or how clever they are with their lawyers and how they figure things out. It's all about what they've done. And it's not about like, oh, gee, I'm sorry, or I'll say some Hail Marys or something like that. No, it's not about that. It's just that, just like a banker coming to the house when you haven't paid the mortgage for 3 or 4 or 5 months, it's like, okay, we got to shut down the property here because you're not paying your part. And so by the very fact that, her karma and everybody else's is fine. I don't care. I don't care about what other people do, but it's affecting me and a lot of other people here. Plus, I want to do projects here to show people how to wake up all the way beyond creation itself. So she's interfering along with so many other reptilian agents on the Earth who appear to be human, but they're reptilian, and they're reptilian agents, and they're all part of this, and it all goes into also the Callum God, Grog, which we will bring into this at some time also. So again, everybody's accountable in creation, and really, it's not really about judgments and accountability and all these things that have been written into these doctrines. It's really, we are all here to wake up. It's just that simple. Wake up all the way and see through creation into the real universes, to where there is no cause and effect and restrictions. But some people, like the Queen here, she likes her rulership. She likes her self-made restrictions. And when you're controlling others, you're also restricted, because actually, even though in her mind she may think that others are her slave because they build her castles and her do her technology and have her scientists and whatever, but she is actually the slave to them. So she's decided to stay the slave to them and not step up and get the guidance and tap lines removed, etc., from her by the real guys. So she's decided to keep them. So she can. She has free will. She has that right. But now it's time to face it. And so as we had this first meeting with her, Claudie, and Claudie was the basic representative, Claudie stepped forward and talked to her. You know, even you, Claudie, you had this impression. Me, I just kind of wait and see. And so I had kind of prompted Claudie to show what was going on, and we had some big screens there. And just simply asked the question, are you okay with this? You see? And so again, like what you're saying, the Queen's response was really not too much. In other words, because she knows what's going on, but she plays the role. Now, Claudie's a universal seer, so as you were standing there, Claudie, with all us around, and Reb Bazar and the boys and the Golden Guides, etc., and watching this and watching the Queen and her impressions, you're able to see what's going on without her even saying a word. Yes, go ahead.
One of the things that happened in that meeting that caused a reaction from me. I came as a representative from Earth, especially from the people who were being tortured by her son. So I came there with a purpose. Now, in my physical body, I'm only 5 feet 3 inches tall. And looking at a Orion entity who is standing at 300 feet tall, there would be a difference. So the guide, Ribazar Tars, adjusted my height to 30 feet, so at least I was not an ant. I was a little bit bigger than that. Now, I'm a grandmother, 71 years of age, and I do not allow people to do evil in my presence. When I approached the Queen and asked the question that Dwayne just mentioned, her indifference and her arrogance triggered something in me. And my body was altered enough that there were spikes put on my back that the Queen would recognize as a part of being a reptilian. She stood in front of me and very deftly peeled a grape. Very slowly, very deliberately, very nonchalantly, peeling a grape in front of me when I am asking her, are you okay with the slaughter and torture of children by your son? And it was like I was asking a wall, are you okay with murder? And the more she presented an indifferent attitude, the angrier I got, to the point I was about to let go the emotional response I was feeling at the moment. Because I knew the law, I knew she was breaking it, and I wanted it to stop. I wanted the people of Earth to be free to choose their life and not to be lied to by a reptilian, her own flesh, her son, and to allow the people to choose. As she peeled this grape and looked at me with callous eyes that were black, dormant, unseen, the angrier I got. And finally, when she picked up another grape and dropped the one she was peeling on the floor, I couldn't take it any longer and I let go with my spikes. Now, Ribazar Tars was standing behind me because he could see that anger was building up. And he put his hands over the spikes so that the total frequency that was being released was withheld. But 2 of the spikes fired, and the wave that came out from them brushed past her till it startled her enough to where she snapped her eyes at me and looked at me Like, how dare you? And that same wave went right past her son Inky, who was watching this whole proceeding from back in the background. So it was enough to get her attention that we weren't there as objects to be ignored, that we were sentient beings, and we were asking for her to stop the torture of sentient beings, that we were, even though she considered us a Lulu, which is a slave, a dumb animal, we had rights. And they had been subjugated and dismissed by the Orion representatives. So we went through this. We almost made it through without a confrontation, but when she dropped the grape on the floor that she was peeling and looked at me with total indifference, I couldn't take it anymore, and I put down. And yes, I was risking a lot. All that's happened on the earth would continue. Now, one of the things that is most important and critical in here is that the Earth's future was tied to the Orion future because there is a connection between Earth and the Orion Empire. Whatever happened on Earth was going to be duplicated in the Orion Empire. So the Queen, even though she definitely said, oh, that doesn't apply to me, it does. Because you cannot continue to do wrong and evil and get away with it. There is a stopping point. So what happened in that meeting was that we decided that she didn't have to in any way be held accountable, but she was culpable. So all we could do was ask her the question, allow her answer to be transmitted across the Orion Empire and across all those present, to the point that what she did and her son did to decimate the earth and the population and destroy us would be addressed by the High Council. And the laws that were broken were enumerated. Slowly but surely, the Orion people are beginning to understand that what they're doing is wrong and must stop. The one thing that they do have as a people is that they do admire or adhere to the laws of honesty, and that they are going to do the right thing. The evil that Inky did and his scientists and cohorts, co-workers, or whoever he was working with, was that they didn't want to evolve past that. They wanted to stay in their vibratory rate of evil. It was enjoyable to them to live off of the fear, the anger, and the hatred that they were generating in the population of slaves they had on the planet Earth. We did not know we're slaves, but we are and were. And it was being continually upgraded and prolonged, and it had to stop. That's why this meeting was called with the Queen, to give her a chance to talk to the real guides, to ask for help, because there's a point where you can choose to go right or left. You can either do good or evil. You can make a choice, but there are consequences to that choice. But you have the freedom to do that. And we, as people on the planet Earth, were denied that freedom. Therefore, those who were wrong in the Orion Empire, from the Queen down to the lowliest janitor in their empire, will be held accountable for what they choose. If you choose to stay in negativity, if you choose to stay in what you consider good, and it's using other people for your sustenance, then that's wrong. And it's a crime, and it has a punishment. And the punishment awaits the Queen.
That was excellent, Claudia. Yes, that's our first meeting with her, and so we did give her time to consider this, etc. Of course, and of course, I basically expected, like on Earth, political arrogance, because these people have been doing it for so long that it seems like it's their right to do whatever they wish to others and not seeing the whole picture. And so what Inky and his cohorts brought to the Earth, and I'm sure to many, many other planets, of course. At one time there was life on them, but lots of times there isn't now. Like Mars is underground, everything's underground. What happened to the atmosphere, etc.? Destroyed. Much of these things just totally destroyed. These are games to them, and they've been around long enough to where all this is taking place. And so, yes, the Earth here, in a way, is I'm not predicting doom here, but there's such a huge agreement to all of what Inky has started. Unconsciously, it goes through many, many levels and way beyond the Orion galaxy there. This is just a start. And so suggest people read the new books and become more familiar with the different levels, and especially Rebazar and the Real Guides and the New You, because again, this is an overall view more so than any religious or spiritual path or galactic whatevers. Again, those things are not put down, but they're very elementary compared to what's going on. And many people look to the so-called space people for to be saved, or that there are saviors existing, etc. There's no such thing. There's no such things as gods and saviors. We've come here to learn to wake up, and this is part of the adventure and the process. So it's kind of like, the bullies at school. After a while, enough bullying, and because people want to get on with their education, have their own lives and experiences, etc. So again, this is just a lot of bullying, but it's way beyond that. It's destroying things, and it's destroying the planet. And looking at the planet today, how destructive things have become with everything, the chemtrails, the fracking, the HARP, the pharmaceuticals, just everything, the Wi-Fi, just go on and on. And it's become like commonplace. It's ridiculous. Like everybody's fine with it. Everything's poisoned and polluted. There is no organic anything anymore. It's all poisoned and polluted, radiated, microwaved, zapped. It's amazing that we're surviving this with these little bodies, but the atmosphere is being destroyed on a daily basis. So we've went over this many times. We don't want to rattle people too much, but the reality is that just simply learn to wake up. And we're using this as an example because we're taking care of this because nobody else can, and that is the Real Guides can make these adjustments. They make the determination. I made the request. I discussed this with Claudia, and then we brought it to Rebazar, and then of course they already know, and it was already being prepared for Claudia to step up to this as we were there, etc. Preparation was taking place, and Claudia didn't know what was going on at first, but eventually it revealed itself, and so here we are. This is an adventure like no other, and we're doing this, you might say, as a public service for everybody, so they better understand a bigger picture than just, the bankers and the agencies and the governments are there. Yeah, these are the offspring. These are part of the cohorts, consciously and unconsciously, from Inky that had been established for eons. And here we are at this point, the new nowness of the all is, and we're at this point to where, enough's enough, because the planet is just become too deranged and strange. And yeah, there are still lovely places on the planet, but that's not the idea. It's still infected, and it's becoming more infected every day. So this was our first meeting, and this is...
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And you would naturally, as you can on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure, see. And after several nights, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.